The other thing I'm going to mention here while I'm in the screen is that we do get a lot of requests for integration, integration of, fundraising systems, donor systems, and whatnot. And there are systems out there that are already integrated with Dynamics, but like sometimes people will have their own system internally, and both SL and GP have great capabilities for importing of data. So there's something called Integration Manager, and what that allows you to do is that, I won't go through all the details, but I guess the point I want to bring up is that you can take a file that comes from another system, and then you can map those columns to the GP fields within a screen. So I've got an account column here, an amount, a date, and then the system gives you the capability to map that data to the particular data entry screen. So all the required fields are in red, so those have to be brought over. But what I do like about the import capabilities in GP is that you can take a data file from another software and then be able to map it to the fields within GP. All right. Okay, I'm running out of time. So where we're going to go to next, we also mentioned budgeting, but I really didn't get into it. But what I do want to point out is that both SL and GP allow for budgeting. You can have multiple versions of the budget. So I get that question a lot, like, can I have, like changes to my budget but still see my original budget? And that's what this budget ID does in GP, is that you can specify a budget ID, and I kind of look at that as a budget version. And we do have the ability to import data from Excel, okay? And then that data becomes part of that budget version. The other thing that's available is that there's a product called Forecaster that comes with the Dynamics product, and that's more of a budget development tool. So like some people, it gets a little unwieldy to keep doing your budgeting in Excel. So there is a product that's available that comes with the system, and then that data is able to be reported on within the financial report writer. Okay. All right, so the next place I'm going to jump into is the financial report writer, which is called Management Reporter. And a lot of people in the past with other systems have used a report writer called FRX. And FRX ran with all of the Dynamics products, but it also ran with a lot of other products out there that were non-Microsoft products. And that particular report writer had an Access database, and it also runs only in a 32-bit environment. So Microsoft created a new product called Management Reporter, and it's broken out into two pieces. One is a viewer, and the other one is a designer of reports. So this is the viewer. I'm just going to bring up the designer in the background. Okay. All right. Okay. Close that for the moment. All right, so the viewer, this is just to give you an idea of the types of reports that come out of the system, okay, with Management Reporter. So we have things like, these names aren't the greatest, but balance sheet, statement of cash flows, income statements, budget versus actual, as well as consolidation reports, okay? So what'll happen is that Management Reporter works with your Active Directory. Okay, so let's bring this up. So you can set up users, okay? Now, when you set up a user, so let's say I want to add a user, new user, and I'm going to search for Charlie. Okay, and this is going to, user, okay. Search. All right, so this is actually checking your Active Directory for that user, and what happens is that depending on what rights you give that user. So if a user's a viewer, they can only view reports and that's it, which is what we're going to take a look at in a moment. If a person is a generator, that means that they can generate their own reports and export those reports to Excel. If you're someone who's a designer, that means you could go in and create reports. And then finally, the administrator has the ability to look in all companies and create users. So, so right now I'm just going to make Charlie a viewer, and once you do that, you can specify what company Charlie could view reports for, okay? So there's control on what a person can do and what company they can look at that information for. So, all right, so let's take an easy report, a balance sheet report. All right, and okay, so this is the balance sheet report, and this particular report, this just gives you an example of some of the information that we can get out of the system. So if I'm a viewer of the report, I guess first of all the thing I want to specify is that you can see multiple versions of the report, okay, so that you can specify date created, and you can also say like final month-end report for June 2008 and or final month-end report for May 2008. So so that'll allow you to then save reports historically so people could go back and view that information. Once I'm into this report, I can do a couple of things. I can go ahead and drill down, say, on different line items in the report. So if I double click on cash, I can see what accounts are rolling into that line item and see what the amounts are for those particular account numbers. And as I mentioned before, you can go ahead and export this data to Excel or XBRL format as well. Now, also within the viewer, you can set up something called report books, so that let's say you want a group of reports along with some Excel files and Word files added to the system. So, so you can go ahead and insert extra files so that, like, let's say for a board meeting you wanted a certain group of reports, like Excel files as backup information to a financial report, you can go ahead and set that up and then give people rights only to this particular report book, okay? Now, the next step after the view-only user is actually how do you go ahead and generate these reports, okay? So, all right, so this is the report designer, and if I click on report definitions, this is where you're going to see a listing of all the reports that are available in the system. So if we look at balance sheet and balance sheet summary, this is the report that we were in before, so I'm just going to double click on that report. And very similar to FRX, the management reporter reports will are consisting of a certain set of building blocks. And then the first item is the row definition. So if I click on the row definition, you'll see here that this is telling you what's going into each row. So, you know, before I drill down on cash, receivables, inventory, and so on. So I've got the line items of the report, but then over to the right, I have a link back to the general ledger. So you can have within a line item a wildcarding of accounts. So here I have all accounts that begin with 10 are my cash accounts. We can also do ranges. Okay, so I'm saying from and through account numbers. And we can also do ranges, and we can subtract out account numbers as well. So here, if I did a range, I can then subtract out an account number that may be part of what's included in my selection. Okay, so really any combination of accounts can go into into a particular row. So the other thing I want to point out here is that you'll see all the segments from my account number. So I have GL account, fund, location, and department, which is how my chart of accounts was set up. That's why your chart of accounts setup is so important to your reporting. You can also have the analytical accounting codes here as well. So if I wanted to have event or a grant or program, I can have this included within this report writer. Now you'll see for most of these lines, I've been selecting on just GL account. But what I can also do, which I like about this report writer, is that when I come down to my fund balances, a lot of times you want to see those listed separately, unrestricted, temporary restricted, and permanently restricted. So if I look at the link to the GL, if I come back to the GL and look at that line item, you'll see here that I'm grabbing my fund balance account, but then I'm also pointing to a particular fund, which is from my fund segment. So you don't have to just pull from one segment. You can pull from multiple segments in order to look at your information in the report. All right. So so really, any combination of accounts can be drawn up, you know, within this system. So let me just close out the row definition. All right. And now, if I look at the column, this is where we define what's going across in the columns. So we have the description that's coming from the row definition, and then we're seeing actual numbers. And I looked at my current year, which is my base year, and base minus 1, which is a prior year. And then we're looking at year-to-date numbers. Okay, so I've got my column definition and row definition, and then that's what creates my report for me. You can reuse these row definitions in other reports, so they're not just specific to the one report. In another example, we have a budget versus actual scenario, and just so we see what that looks like. All right. So for that particular report, we have our description, then actual budget and variance, and then we have current month as well as year-to-date information. So actual budget variance for current month as well as year-to-date, okay? And now, because this has current month information in it, if I decide that I want to drill down on payroll tax expense, let's say, I can do that, and I can see the accounts that are rolling into that, and then I can view further to see the individual transactions that go into that particular account.
One of the problems I have with a lot of this reporting, when I download it into Excel, because I do a lot of variance reports, the variances between the receipt and the revenue side and the variances on the expense side, I have to always fiddle with, because they said the same thing with this.
What do you mean? Oh, because of the signage?
Right.
Yeah. They know that that's a problem. That's actually been handled better within this product versus FRS.